Wow, what a presentation of Requiem Aeternam and Kyrie eleison from one of my favorite works by W.A. Mozart, the Requiem Mass KV 626. The mass that he couldn't finish before he passed on. Good evening and welcome to the Choralist Choir Hour. This is a show whereby I spend 1 hour with a choir, in fact with a conductor and choir management of various choirs, especially in the SADC region. And of course, in the near future, I want to be talking to choirs from other African countries. I know there's a very active choir in Ghana, Harmonious Chorale, and other choirs in various countries. It would be nice to talk to those choirs and see and hear what they're doing, and whether they can actually collaborate with some of South African choirs. That would be nice. And thank you very much for joining me this evening. I really appreciate your support. I mean, there are people who are always here every evening, every Sunday afternoon. They are there watching, and not only watching, but also contributing to the show, because this is not a show whereby I just talk to musicians, but it's a show whereby we interact with the audience as well, because everyone that follows the show is someone who is involved in choral music, who has an interest in choral music. So it's always good to have you guys. Tag your friends who may have forgotten. Last week, if you were watching on Sunday, we had a very powerful conversation between 3 South African composers, Dr. Bongani Ndodana Brin Musanguna and Mukale Kwapeng, and that was facilitated by Utembela Vokwana, which was a collaboration between the Choralist and University of Fort Hare Music Department. And this kind of collaborations are going to happen quite a lot, because if we want to develop choral music, we need to form ties, with music departments, with other organizations like Artscape, our State Theatre, and other organizations around the country, so that we don't work in a silo as choral music practitioners. But if you want to listen to that conversation, follow it, you can go to our YouTube channel, Type in Sibusiso Njeza, the Choralist. You'll find all the conversations there. This evening, I'm joined by a choir from KZN, Sesivile, Yole, that was performing Requiem Aeternam, Clermont Chorale. It's a fairly new choir, but as you've just heard, IET, they've just joined the fraternity, because I think, if I'm correct, they established this choir in 2017. But like Zam, and ladies and gentlemen, I am joined by the chairperson and the conductor of Clermont Chorale, chairperson Thulasizwe Ndlovu, and the conductor Lihlohonolo Muaisi. Balapa, let me get them in. There they are. Gentlemen, good evening. Thula, kunjani?
Maduna, molo mfethu, unjani wena?
Ndiphilile tata. Ndiphilile
akho. I'm very good, ngiyabonga bhuti.
Yes. Mr. Conductor, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Baba Njeza.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm very well, very well. Let me not assume that you guys delegated the conductor, of course, because I always want to talk to the conductor, and you then delegated one member from the executive, and I just assume that there are other people, and more especially women. Do you have women in the executive of this choir? It's not a male affair. Oh, great.
Yes, great. No, we have. And in actual fact, we have more females in the executive than males. With the top 6 portfolios, it's mainly females. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 females. 5 female. Yeah, let me see. 4, 5, and then the 3 in the art department, it's males, yeah, but it's we have five, let's say five females that are active in the executive.
No, that's great. That's great. Because it's one of the things that we've been talking about in the show, be it on the Sunday afternoon conversations or with the choir hour on Thursday evening. We talk about bringing in women into leadership positions, and not only because they are women, but because they are capable and they are there in the choir. So I'm glad that Clermont Chorale also has women. Before we go any further, let's get to know the choir. Chairperson, ngobani Clermont Chorale? I just said to the people, it's a fairly new choir, but you guys are doing well. Now we need to know, when did you guys establish the choir? Where, who are the members? You know, where do you draw your members?
All right. Firstly, let me say thank you, Maduna, for this opportunity, and let me congratulate you on this project. I think you've kept us alive. You've kept the fraternity active. You brought back a glimmer of hope for many people that maybe they thought choral is dying. I think this choralist project is very beautiful, and thank you for affording us this opportunity this evening. So let me go ahead and greet all the viewers, and yeah. We a choir that was established in 2016 November. Officially, it was the 16th of November 2016 in Clermont. Then that was our first meeting where we decided to establish this choir, brand it, and give it a name. Yes, we first went out publicly in our first public appearance in March 2017. But the choir and the structure and the constitution and the registration was all established at the end of 2016. Yeah, it's a choir that has membership that's a nightmare to manage because it's literally all over the country. We have members in KZN, we have a lot of members in Gauteng, we have members even in KZN. We have very few actually around Durban. Many of our members are not in Durban. Newcastle, Richards Bay, Nongoma, Okwini, Akopo, even in the Eastern Cape, we have broad membership there. So yeah, it's a choir on paper with about 70 members, active members, that really are coming from all parts of South Africa. Mpumalanga, one in Northwest. So yeah, it's a very diverse choir from everywhere, and we try and manage it.
Sure, that's quite a big choir. And I know it's quite a challenge to manage a choir like that. But why did you decide on taking that approach? Before I bring in the conductor, let me stay with you a bit.
All right, it's fine. Let me, maybe Maduna, let's talk on how the choir was established first, and the reasoning behind, because maybe before people start interacting the conversation, they will want to know this thing about the link between Clermont Community Choir and Clermont Chorale and how, and maybe let's just get that one out of the way first, so that maybe then you see how this choir is structured. So what happened was, when the leadership of Clermont, the core membership of Clermont Chorale are members of Clermont Community Choir in the 2013 era. So when the leadership in 2014 of Clermont Community Choir decided to restructure the choir, they went for an approach to keep the numbers at minimum and having a core of the choir being around about 30, 40 members, and then the others, different levels of membership of the choir, which was their approach. I understand why they did it, and it was a fantastic thing. However, what that caused, in my opinion, is a break between people who really loved each other, people who've been together for years, to an extent that some of us, some members were expelled from the choir. Some were told, you are you will be called when needed, that kind of approach. But then 2 years, 3 years, the choir was active in certain areas, achieving glorious things. But some of us who were told we were going to be called in when we needed, we were never called. We were never, invited back to the choir. So we then regarded ourselves no longer as members of the choir. I want to give you an example that of about 50 members I'm talking of here, maybe only 10 of them joined other choirs or participated with other choirs. The other 40, I'm just guesstimating numbers here, chose to stay. So there were members that were not doing anything for a whole of 3 years, from 2013 until 2016. They were not doing anything. They were not participating anywhere. They were not active in any choral platforms or competitions or concerts or any performances. They couldn't, because it's people who were always together. Even when we were attending competitions, we went together, even though we were not forming part of any choir. We organized transport together. So we really loved each other and stuck together. So when the idea came in 2016, they actually came here to my house. We were watching, I think, Melting Pot 2016. There was a meeting here that I was not even aware of. And then that's when the idea was born to say, look, we really need to start doing something. And that's how the choir was really born, taking all those members that were sitting doing nothing, putting them together, giving them a brand, and then we are not a breakaway. We are people who are sitting doing nothing for 3 years, and we decided to form this choir. So then we had interest from all over the country. We struggled the first 2 years. I think each and every performance we had a different conductor on stage. We struggled. We had members, but no technical leadership, permanent. We then drawn interest from people, a lot of people from Maritzburg, Newcastle, and then with the introduction of Mr. Moaisi, we then established, because he's very active here around Gauteng as well, we established what I would really call a branch this side. We have almost 20 members this side of Gauteng. That's really the diversity of the choir. And then other members are really from interest, and maybe friendship with members or recruited by members that just joined our choir. Others from other choirs, yes, but others are people who have not really been in choirs. Maybe a classic example, Moaisi will attest to this, will be Bongani Mtombeni, who was not in any choir, very brilliant tenor, known everywhere. We hired him 1 year, and that year he just decided, yes, he'll never hire me again. I'm joining this family. That's how it became part of the choir. And just like that, the membership grew, and we decided to brand it. Our slogan is family above all, because that's really how we were established as a family, people who loved each other, who were unfortunate that we couldn't be together as often as we'd have loved. So we decided to come in, and that's how we established the choir.
Yeah, let me bring in Mr. Moaisi. From what you've just said, Tula, he was not part of the Clermont Community Choir before you guys moved. I got that part, right?
Yeah, he was not.
Okay. No, that's fine. Mr. Moaisi, now you are the conductor of Clermont Chorale. I always want to know what sets your organization apart from others, because I believe in order for any organization to succeed, there has to be something special, and because you are the commander in chief, you influence a lot of that in the choir as a conductor, be it in the form of repertoire or in the form of performances or programs that we engage in. But what sets Clermont Chorale apart from other choirs?
Njeza, maybe also let me start by thanking you for this opportunity, and also to greet the viewers. Siyabonga kakhulu to be part of this opportunity. And just to get to your question, I don't think there's anything special about how we set up or how we plan things. I don't regard my plan as special as such. However, my objective after joining the choir has always been to achieve a certain identity or to give a choir a certain identity in terms of how we approach music, in terms of the sound, more especially, and of course in terms of the repertoire that we choose, because the repertoire also is a very huge determining factor when it comes to sound and what you want to achieve eventually in the choir. So it's safe to say, we're still in the building stages of that. The choir has not actually reached the identity, but we slowly but surely getting there. Fortunately, because the choir has got a lot of talented individuals. Noma kungaba difficult to administer rehearsals, different branches and satellites and all that. But by the time you come together, we can, at least everyone shows commitment and everyone brings their game together. So kuba lula to actually achieve. But in terms of the objective and what actually sets us apart or makes us unique, we trying to build a certain identity or give a choir a certain identity in terms of its musicianship.
Now that you mentioned a little bit about the repertoire and the approach to how you make music with the choir. Last week, like I just said, we had a conversation here on the Choralist with South African composers whose music is not performed within the choral space in South Africa, but they do have some vocal music. But their music sort of stretches what we're used to, you know. And one of the things that came up, which was not the first time, was that in most cases, as conductors, we limit our choirs in terms of repertoire to very simple music, to music that has been overly done. We don't challenge ourselves with modern music, and that music is very difficult. So are you considering any of that in terms of diversifying your repertoire within the choir?
Of course, but just like any other organization, the music or the repertoire that we choose needs to suit the makeup of the choir and what we plan to achieve with the choir. So yes, we plan to be as diverse as possible, just so that we are able to cover a repertoire in its diverse nature. And then maybe just to make mention of one point, the unfortunate thing about choral industry South Africa has been that the big platform, or should I say the main platform of showcasing, has always been competition. And now we need to try and bring people back to concert houses. Now, if we are afforded that space, or if we create that space, then we'll be able to perform a lot of music. Because you can imagine, if you're just doing competitions, then you end up doing 3-4 songs in the whole year. But if you take part in concerts, you create concerts, then the repertoire grows, then you are able to also attack and use compositions from other composers.
Now that's very true. That's very true. Tula, before we move to talking about your projects that you had planned for this year and whatever you guys will be doing going forward, I want to engage you more on this leadership issue, because of course, besides you being a singer, because I saw you in one of these performances singing there, Eterna. Approach your Clermont Chorale to leadership or to management or to governance. Because I believe some organizations die before they even get to start because of how these three things are set up: leadership, management, and governance. Even if it happens after 3 years, but it would have been how the organization is set up. You mentioned as a passing point that during the period of restructuring in your previous choir, there were people who were left in limbo, which means that was never something that was discussed much earlier and managed, properly. We're not discussing that, but we're just using that as a point. So what is the approach? Say, for instance, one day somebody else develops and is very good with conducting. Do you keep and suppress that person and fight them if they want to go establish another choir and grow, or do what Joy of Africa did in the past where they had two choirs? So I'm just asking this just generally. What is your approach? How are you guarding it?
I get it. I want to quote someone who is in this conversation. I won't call him by name. When I approached him to come conduct the choir, it was on a trial basis as well, because I had worked with him in my church choir competitions. And he was like, okay, let's go and see. But after the first performance or the first project, he said to me, "This is the most well-managed choir I've ever worked with." In my opinion, that's what he said. A certain gentleman who is one of us here. Why is that? I think my approach and the approach of the team that I lead with, two, one, we understand that everyone who is there, or we try and ensure that everyone who is in the choir means well or has the best interest of the choir at heart. Everyone. Like we have people, 2,000 in the choir, all the way to people approaching 50. So in that way, everyone feels important and everyone feels treasured and valued. That's one. It's more leadership than management. And the second thing is I would love all the time, even though it's hard to achieve sometimes when you are a leader, because you have to have your own vision, that you carry people in your vision. You make people feel part of your decision making, your choices, and not dictate and not make people feel as if they have to, do things as you say they must be done. So that's my approach and the approach of the leaders that I lead with. But I think the beautiful recipe with our choir, and Papa will attest to that, I think, we love each other. We love each other. So with that Portionian love, even in disagreement, we manage to come out of it beautifully with love. And I think that's the magic recipe in our choir. We really, it's really crazy people who love each other.
That's great. Conductor, let me put you on the spot. The issue of accountability. The issue of accountability, we sometimes we are culprits as conductors. Sometimes it is through the laziness of our leaders that you end up, taking care of business that you are not supposed to. In one conversation I had, Ubandile Mngoma, I remember, was one of my guests. He mentioned that there are choirs who are still paid through their conductors, and that for me is a big no. And as conductors, we shouldn't get into that business of monies and when we have. So how are you keeping yourself, clear away from mingling with the business of the executive?
Yeah. Fortunately, as Kateni mentioned earlier, they really try by all means to manage things properly. So, number one, it makes it easy for me to stay out of other things. But one should mention as well, perhaps with the start of us bringing a lot of members from Gauteng, that's when, that's the only time where I have to find myself managing that and doing some administrative things here in terms of transporting and all that. But only with the satellite rehearsal that we have. And fortunately, because he stays in Pretoria, he's based in Pretoria as well, so it's easy for me to also involve him to say, hey, Ushodala, this is what needs to happen, this is what needs to happen, so that I don't find myself putting my hands where I'm not supposed to. But in terms of organizing rehearsals or making sure that my choristers are going to rehearsal for satellite rehearsal, that I don't see it as meddling a lot into the executive portfolio.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I mean, at some point we have to assist because some of our executive members are less experienced, but they are growing in that space. So, but it's a point that I had to bring up because conductors are in hot water out there. When the conductor tries to save the choir, nobody says anything in some instances. But when the choir is saved, because sometimes it is because of the inefficiency of the leadership that the choir doesn't have an account, and now NCF or any other competition or festival wants to pay, and then they end up taking your number, your account number. Ladies and gentlemen, I am in a conversation with Clermont Chorale, who chairperson and the conductor. Let me give them a break and we listen to some music from their collection. I think I had Kwadeta Ngendlale here.
No!
Wow, I agree with all the comments that have been flying here, like this one, Katembi. This is a beautiful rendition of Kwateta Ngendlale by Professor Mzilikazi Khumalo, well handled by the conductor. I'm actually surprised. I don't know him until now, that he's conducting Clermont Chorale. Where have you been? Where has he been? It's like he's been conducting for like many years. I can
Before he answers, let me tell you
Hmm.
something. After his first performance, what was it? Was it Quando Corpus? I think it was Quando Corpus. Vusi Kanyile, I was sitting with Vusi Kanyile, we were doing the live stream, and he asks me, hey, umthatha lo muntu. Was it run good to conduct? So that's you're not alone in that. Where's this guy been? But before he says something, I just want to say he's a great artist, and I identified that he's done a lot of work with other choirs as a tenor soloist as well, and conducting workshops in schools and church competitions and stuff. So I just said, wena uzo conducting choir one day, wahleka and ngamthatha ngenkani. He can answer for himself now.
This is another conductor, Umagazole Tete, na yucho kuyasetshenzwa, well organized and well controlled. And I agree with him. You know, everything. There's a condom now that I love more than a conductor who is very clear on his intention. You know, it doesn't matter what happens with the choir, but I can see the intent from the conductor. So where have you been, sir? Let's hear from you now.
Well, I'm flattered by all the comments. But I've been around. I've been around. I started conducting my high school choirs. My first conducting, I started conducting. I was a teacher at Ndlela High School in Piet. That's where it all started until I ended up here. But professionally, I'm a music teacher. I'm a singing teacher. That's what I do every day. I teach piano as well, and I also teach theory of music. And then here and there, I would accompany the school choir, piano for my rehearsals and performances. So yes, conduct a choir as big as Clermont. It cannot be compared with the number of choirs I've worked with, because the choir itself, even if it's new, but it has a great pedigree. And I must say, it's only available with a very good pedigree, with a lot of talented individuals. So it's not easy for you to let such people down when you are in the midst of such beautiful souls and the support that you get. And you also mentioned that as well, because you have a more fear in the way, and then you are new, you're a conductor, expected to lead. There's nothing that gives you support and puts you at ease than to giving you love, support, and just going out of their way to make sure that you are at ease and you are comfortable all the time.
Your mic is muted, Madonna, here.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So you being a music teacher, piano teacher, an accompanist, a singing teacher, it just explained it all. I remember at some point, Asai Kozani, the pianist from Eastern Cape, he once conducted the Nelson Mandela Choir, Ilastrade, the one that used to be conducted by Umtura Majek, Ubele. And, you know, the few performances I watched Aseko, he was so clear in everything he was doing. You know, the clarity from the choir, intonation of the choir, Yonge and Jinto was just spot on. It actually reflected the ear, the oral training of pianists. Anyway, let's move on. We only have about 12 minutes. Tula, let me come back to you, because I think this part belongs to the leadership, the programs. Of course, you work with the artistic department, the conductor and his team. The program, he mentioned that choirs that only rely on competitions are always limited by whatever the competition wants. So what are the programs that maybe you had for 2020, and what are your plans going forward?
We had a number of things. Actually, we were very, very unfortunate that just a couple of days before our human rights concert that was planned and going to be presented at the Durban City Hall with Sing Africa. Just a couple of days before that actual concert, the president declared lockdown and no gatherings of people more than 50, and also that our concert was cancelled. That was a major event beginning of this year that didn't happen. Later this year again, Moise had a couple of plans, like he wanted to do a concert as well around about this time, just before we go into the competition season. And we have an annual event, Christmas carols event. Now, unfortunately, we just had, for the past 2 years, we've been having it the first or second weekend of December. But this year, it just happened that a big event is being planned in Durban for celebration Gababum Nomiya. So we didn't want to interfere with that weekend, because we respect and understand that this is a very worthy cause and it's a beautiful event that is being planned, and we'll certainly be in attendance to that. So our carols are not happening this year, but we had a program outside competitions. Actually, one of the great adjudicators, Ubabu Tamizungu, was willing to make us as his PhD case study in one of the projects that we're going to do now. So 2020 has been a very, very sad scene for us, but I don't know if my leaders are going to kill me for this, because we have not officially announced it, but we are planning for an event early in February already. I was in a meeting with some organizers just last weekend. So yeah, we have not gone public to announce the details of that, but we are planning for an event early February next year.
Okay, anything you want to add, Mr. Moise?
Not much. I lost signal Nyana earlier. But yes, perhaps just to add on what Chairperson has said with 2020, I mean, it's actually through us, it's through everyone. So, we can't complain because everyone suffered from that. But obviously, as I said at the beginning of this conversation, is that all the time when we plan things like a concert and all that, it's not only just to showcase, but also is to help with the development of the choir and to see how best can we progress building this choir of ours. But anyway, we're hoping for a better year next year.
No, that's great. That's great. Talking about COVID-19 taking everyone by surprise, because really, when we first heard about COVID-19, sometime in October, November last year in China, a virus in China. I remember the beginning of the year, around Feb, March, here at UWC, we have a Chinese organization that we are friends with. We normally perform in their events. We've learned their anthem. So sometimes when there are events here, we perform the South African anthem and the Chinese anthem there. We were supporting them. We had an event, just a brief event, to send messages to them and those that were in China, to their families, not knowing that in a week from there, the virus will be here in South Africa and everything will just come to stand still. I mean, so nobody was prepared for it. But I wanted to check, gentlemen, this month, October, is designated to be mental health month. And we know that a lot of artists suffered a lot in terms of losing jobs. There's no work for the period of COVID-19. There's only one choir, I don't know how they did it, Abancedisi Adult Choir, I think in Grahamstown, who had some sort of a stipend a month that was given to choristers. I don't know how they planned it, how they did that. I am hoping that in one of the shows I'm going to have them so that they can share the secret. Are there any plans, probably not for your own choir, maybe that everyone could consider in the choral fraternity? But xa sinophinda sifunyanwe yinto enjenge-COVID-19, what do we do? How do we take care of our members so that bangangeni kwinto yoba basuffer from mental health because of ukuphela komsebenzi?
Okay, Mangia. I think generally there's something we need to accept first before we try and solve our problems as a choral fraternity. In my opinion, I think iqatha lincane, inyama lesidlayo incane. So the only way to survive is to try and make sure that we share it well and look after it and preserve it such that it lasts us longer. That's I'm very idiomatic here, but I think the biggest problem is that we are a people who talk a lot and do less, number one, and we are people who want to compete more than collaborate, and we are people who just do not want to reinvent and adapt ourselves with the demands of current situations. So if we can organize ourselves, particularly on working together more in making sure that, number one, our voice is loud, and number two, that whatever little that we obtain, we share it. There's a beautiful saying in these Sotho languages, correct, but it's all about abantwana bomuntu bahlephulelana ngisho ikhanda lenyoni. I've just translated it. I don't want to try to say it in their language, but that's what they say. So if we treat ourselves in that way, as the entire industry, all choirs, all practitioners, if we share leli khanda lenyoni kahle, it will last longer, and we will be able to make sure ukuthi uma livela elinye sisasenayo sonke energy yokuqhubeka, and in that way uma silamba sonke, everyone uyasibona, and lo muntu okufanele asilungiselele ukuthi singalambi will hear us if sikhuluma ngazwi linye and sibonisana, sinikana ithuba lokuthi sisebenzisane more than compete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I agree with the chapter said, because I think one of our greatest problems for choral fraternity is that, for example, I don't think we support each other enough when it comes to concerts, because I mean those are fundraising events for a particular choir. So if you were to organize a concert for a choir, I mean, you should expect other choirs obviously to be in support of that, whether they be taking part or as audience members. So if we can just maybe start bringing back that spirit of support, and we'll be able to generate funds for our choir.
Yeah, and I think we just lost our host. Probably we just need to hang 10. Okay, there he comes back.
Sorry about that. I just had a power cut, so my router just went off. But we're back. We're back. Thank you. Sorry about that. Mr. Moisi, I was gonna come to you. Your opinion on this?
Yes, I actually mentioned something when you went off, that perhaps just to show support amongst choirs. You know, when one choir is doing something, let's show support to that choir, because that is a fundraising event for that particular choir. And also very important as well is to also change the attitude of our choristers. You know, our choristers tend to have a very positive attitude when it comes to competition. But when it comes to concerts, which are supposed to generate funds and ensure the sustainability of the choir, then they don't show as much enthusiasm as they show with competition. So also a change of attitude would go a long way that way.
I agree. I agree. More especially with the point about choristers, not being interested in other programs other than competitions. Perhaps it's also a challenge for us conductors and choir management, to educate our choristers, to workshop our choristers, to win them over into understanding, the broader vision of the choir, not only the competition. Maybe not as conductors, we are so excited about competitions such that we place enormous value on them, other than when we have an ordinary concert, or else there's a gig where choir is invited. Sometimes uzobhadalwa even more than what the competition would give you. So maybe that's one of the challenges we need to solve. Gentlemen, as we are closing off, there's a video that you guys did, get gender-based violence, which is a second pandemic. In fact, it was if a first pandemic, gender-based violence even before COVID-19. What led you into doing that video? I'm gonna play it shortly before Spume.
I think we as a family as well needed to have our say and take our stance. So it was not just a public display of our stance, but also a regeneration within our members, particularly our male members, that gentlemen, we are not going to be part of this. We are not entertaining cases anjalo in this family. We are here to love one another, to protect and preserve our female members, and in that way, it goes to our families and our general lovers or followers of the choir, and anybody who just comes to contact with us. It was just really that message to say, we cannot really allow this to carry on perpetually. So as an organization, we had to take a stance. Cases were just coming day after day after day. It was as if media is making things up. It was just a horrific thing. It's still a horrific thing, by the way. I'm not talking in the past as if it's something that actively, especially us fathers who are raising boys, if we don't start now teaching them well and giving them the right mental attitude and everything that they need and how to treat women, we're going to lose this battle. So I think it's something that we all need to take seriously, especially parents with boy children. It's horrible. That's just how we viewed it and we put together.
Very true. Sekwanele. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me this evening. Let me give you gentlemen just 30 seconds each. Ukuvalelisa.
Siyabonga kakhulu, Baba Njeza. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you again to our viewers out there. Let's hope to see each other back in our concert halls or competition halls in 2021. Thank you.
Definitely. Tula.
Ngiyabonga Maduna, thank you very much for joining this stream, and again, thank you for this opportunity. And everyone who's enjoyed this and participated in this conversation, really appreciate you. And all I can say is family above all. It doesn't only apply to Clermont Chorale, it also applies to everyone in the choral fraternity. We are a family. Let's love each other, even in disagreement. Let's treat each other as people who can't live without each other. Thank you.
Siyabulela. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. Next Sunday, I will be having a conversation with a group of young professional opera singers from South Africa, abazibizai opportunity, which is one of the things that we want young singers, young professionals to do, to get organized and create work for themselves. And here they are on Sunday at 3 o'clock. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, my name is Khutiman Lehobie. Do yourself a favor and catch the Choralist Conversations with your host Sibusiso Njeza every Sunday at 3 p.m. on the Choralist Facebook page and YouTube channel.